What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another Pay-Per-Viewpoint edition of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast. We're going to be talking about WWE Crown Jewel 2023 coming up this Saturday. So, as per usual, we've got our predictions and our preview set up for this. I am your host, as always, Tony Mango, joined as always by Callum Wiggins.
Hello there.
And Robert DeFelice.
Hello.
We have 8 matches on this card currently. I am not anticipating any more being added, although they could just switch it up. The card's always subject to change, but we are going to be running down our thoughts on what's going to happen on all these matches, giving our at least first initial rundown of picks when it comes to the fantasy league stuff. We might end up changing our minds once we have, the next couple days go by or something, but I might end up coming back around to the same ideas there. And as of course, per usual with what we have to say, we want to know what you have to say about Crown Jewel. So drop your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us what you're thinking about all these different matches and our thoughts on these matches and all. While you're doing that, make sure you hit the like button on this video, double check that you are subscribed, and that you ring that little notification bell, because we will be doing our post show immediately following the pay-per-view on Saturday, which if you go based off of the website right now, ends at 1 p.m. on the next day, because they had put a typo on the lineup of what's going to stream on the... Let me double check to see if they fixed it by now. No, they still haven't. And so if you go to WWE's what's streaming this week, it says that the kickoff is at noon, and then the pay-per-view starts at 8 p.m. and ends at 1 p.m. I am not anticipating a 17-hour pay-per-view or anything.
Well, then you don't know Roman Reigns well enough.
I definitely don't know Woman Reigns.
I did say Roman Reigns.
Roman Reigns.
Be very, very quiet. I'm hunting.
Crown Jewel. Do that for the whole thing. Make sure you pick up some merchandise on Redbubble and T-Public. Make sure that you stay tuned for that post show, though, because we'll obviously be running down what happened and what, if we got something right, we got something wrong, if we got some big twists along the way. And if you want to help us out on the monetary side of things, not only is there the Patreon, but there's also the little join button over there on YouTube. Click on that just the same as you would click on the thanks button, but that gives you access to the Darkcasts and to pick a poison tier and all. We actually do have one of the Darkcasts already in the bag. We watched the Vladimir documentary, and that's going to be published on this channel on tomorrow, actually, the 1st. So that's a fan ounce table watch along, which you should check out and watch along with us. But might be doing another Darkcast or two, depending on how much time we've got for this month. So
Hold on. It's a watch along, and then it takes a turn.
Yeah, and then it gets real deep and talking about
life and death,
the sentience of atoms, and and everything like that. So, Crown Jewel is set up for this weekend, and I gotta say, I am feeling pretty underwhelmed about a good portion of this card. I feel like we've had many of these Saudi Arabia shows in the past that they've had some pretty standout things, like, they've had a gimmick or something like, the greatest Royal Rumble or the biggest Battle Royal, whatever. Nothing this time around. It's not even like the Elimination Chamber or whatever. And it also seems like half the matches to me are basically like something you would see on Monday Night Raw. And then some of the other ones are kind of low effort. Like the most amount of effort I think that they put into this is basically just saying, well, you've got Roman, you've got Cena, you've got Logan Paul, Cody's here, a couple titles are on the line. Shut up, that's good enough. And I hate to be negative enough to just crap on a lot of the people that I really like, because there's really almost nobody on this whole lineup that I'm not a fan of. But this definitely seems like one of those events where the effort and the build heading up into it is not going to match the in-ring quality. If it's going to be a good pay-per-view, it's going to be because these people are good wrestlers. You guys feel the same?
So I feel the same in that it's a mixed bag for me, but I actually feel the opposite in terms of I think that the build for some of this will be more remembered than the matches. And overall, I do kind of get the vibe that a few tweaks here and there, and you could have turned this into something that means more, but I do think it'll be a memorable show by the end of it.
I think it comes across as a pretty well-structured card for the most part. I think that, as someone who's not watching the week-to-week build, I don't know how great a lot of the lineup would be. But obviously there's some matches that I'm not super excited for, but there are some that I think would be really good, or at least interesting to see how they go. Interesting, there's no tag team matches at all. It's all straight, well, it's all one-on-one matches apart from one. So that's that unique little facet to this card. But
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, I think that for the most part, it's shaping up to be pretty solid as a show.
Well, I'm going to combine.
Say,
oh, go ahead.
As we continue to have this discussion through the months, I think you're winning, Callum, in terms of not watching the week-to-week programming is probably the way to be most excited for these shows. I don't think you watch the Saudi shows as on principle, but I will say that this is probably the best way to go into these shows by not watching the holding pattern booking style of we're Judgment Day, we run Monday Night Raw, and like, look, Judgment Day is doing great. Don't get me wrong, they're doing some of the best stuff. I think some of those people might be most remembered for this angle. But last night in particular, I was not feeling it. I was like, enough. I know you run Monday Night Raw. Do something else. Start some other way, because it's too much for me.
That's the way I wanted to start this, is by saying the two matches that stand out the most to me as being low effort are a kickoff match that we're getting here, which that's pretty rare these days. So I don't know why they're doing it as a kickoff, but JD McDonough against Sami Zayn, and then Cody Rhodes against Damian Priest. These are just matches that we keep seeing on Monday Night Raw every single week. And I'm a fan of all four of those guys. But holy shit, I do not care whatsoever, because nothing is on the line. It doesn't matter whatsoever. You know, if JD McDonough beats Sami Zayn, is that going to be the thing that makes them want to induct him into the Judgment Day for real? What's the difference if he's in the Judgment Day for real or not? He's there all the time anyway. They might as well just say he already is. It doesn't change the dynamic. But they didn't even say that was the case. It's just a match that's happening. So if he loses, it's no different than him losing to Seth Rollins. And then Cody Rhodes and Damian Priest, it's not even for the Money in the Bank briefcase. So it's just, I'm mad at you even more than the past 7 months that I've been doing that. Like,
because I real quick want to say this match could mean so much more if it was just for the fucking briefcase, because they're doing a great story. One of the best stories being told on this show is the story of Rhea Ripley making her presence felt in the world title match, and like trying to get either Rollins or McIntyre to join Judgment Day. And it's very clear that they're setting something up with Judgment Day and the world title. If you just had Cody be like, I'm going to finish the story, and since we're fighting, I got Adam Pearce to agree that you have to defend your Money in the Bank briefcase. Now I'm going to beat you and then go on to finish the story. That's at least something. He doesn't have to win. You know,
right, it could always be like something happens where he wins by DQ, or, well, no, I guess technically he would get the briefcase then, but like, Judgment Day could just screw him out of it still, but it's like just putting in that effort to say, here's where we're telling you we want to go with this. And then Sami and JD, it's not offensive to me. It's just very strange that the last time they were in Saudi, which wasn't that long ago, Sami Zayn was in the main event and he's on the kickoff. And I know a lot of this is interchangeable now, and people will be like, oh, don't get so hung up on that. He'll be the main event next month and it'll fit perfectly fine. But it's still weird to me. You know what I mean? Like, a kickoff is still the kickoff, and it's still strange that he went from the main event of the show to not even technically on the card.
I think between those two, Sami is on the show because now after the imposed ban on him being in Saudi Arabia. Now he's the go-to choice for Saudi Arabia because he speaks Arabic. He can do that in front of the crowd again and just get, a comfortable win over JD McDonough after losing a lot of his matches recently. Just give him a bounce-back victory over the Judgment Day's whipping boy, even though he's not really part of the Judgment Day, but that's neither here nor there. And Cody versus Damian Priest, I mean, that's just... I'd say we've seen configurations of all of Cody and Damian and all the other members of Judgment Day and all members of Cody's crew with Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Jey Uso throughout this entire time. But that's what they do. And that is, that's their rinse and repeat mentality. It's just now they're just trying to find what's a different configuration of these matches that we can do. Okay, let's put Cody and Damian in a one-on-one match instead. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. It should be a decent enough match, and it'll be both of them using their own variations of the Crossroads. Now, Priest brought back the Reckoning as one of his finishing moves. So I imagine they'll both trade that. Cody will eventually get the victory, and that's the reason why the briefcase isn't on the line, because Cody's going to win.
I understand that. I'm just saying you could make it mean so much more.
Or pretty much anything when it comes to, if you want to try to set up something for War Games, for instance, like maybe announce that that's going to happen at Survivor Series and make it Cody versus Damian, and the winner of this gets the advantage for that. Or, they'll probably do that on Monday Night Raw, and they'll probably try to build that up for whatever. But to me, when you do hey, it's like, you're supposed to be really excited. It's Cody versus Damian. And you're like, I know I really like these two guys, but man, I would care so much more if you didn't do 3 brawl segments and a match for 4.5 months, where now I've seen them go up against each other 18 times. And what's the difference?
Yeah, no, they just put out too much content, and Judgment Day's involved with everything, and Cody's involved with everything that the Judgment Day do for the most part. So yeah, of course, we've seen this match in different configurations, but it's one-on-one, and so they might be able to do some sort of interesting little elements to it. But I mean, fundamentally, it can't make it much more, because it can't be for the briefcase, because they don't want Cody to win the briefcase. They clearly want Damian to keep hold of it for the time being, so they can't have that on the line, because Cody's probably going to win, because if he is being built up to face Roman at WrestleMania, then, or win the Royal Rumble, or however that will end up working, then he needs to keep winning matches, especially one-on-one matches. And then the other thing is for the War Games thing. I think it's quite obvious from what again, someone who's not watching but sees a few clips here and there, thinks it's pretty obvious they're moving towards Raw versus SmackDown at Survivor Series. Now they've got 2 general managers, and they've already established that Nick Aldis and Adam Pearce don't like each other. I think that we are reverting back to Survivor Series to brand warfare. So that means that that's anticipated,
Bloodline Judgment Day type thing.
Day. Yeah, well, it wouldn't be Bloodline Judgment Day, it'd just be Judgment Day versus what the Cody's crew would end up being. But that pretty much died as soon as Kevin Owens was drafted over to SmackDown.
It's weird though, because they were kind of setting up this idea.
Series. So there's no Bloodline. Roman's not Survivor Series either. So there's no need to do a big War Game style blood feud between these ones. Now there's no configuration where it works.
It just seems so.
I think that's ridiculous. Even if just real quick on that Roman thing, because it's like, even if it's Raw versus SmackDown, you've been building to a stupid Seth and Roman match. I'll just say Meltzer's great. I just don't buy that Roman's not booked for Survivor Series yet.
That's the thing that gets me, is because it's like, well, if they go back to Raw versus SmackDown and then specifically don't have the world champion versus world champion thing, then that's such a cop-out to be like, well, we can't do Bloodline and Judgment Day teaming up against the big crew of baby faces, but we're going to do Raw versus SmackDown, but we can't do the traditional elimination match or the other thing. It's like, well, then you don't want to do any of it. Then you just want to do War Games for the sake of having the cages. And, I mean... Yeah,
they'll find some way around it. They'll do like either Solus Courage or Jimmy Uso versus Seth Rollins for the World Heavyweight Championship, and be that as like the Raw versus SmackDown thing.
in any fashion, I'm going Sami Zayn and Cody Rhodes both win these matches. What about you guys?
Yep, same.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And then I will say I'm not feeling like a super high effort when it comes to the John Cena versus Solo Sikoa match either. I know that the draw is just John Cena's there, but I like Solo Sikoa, but I don't feel like he's this future world champion level yet that a lot of other people say. And I'm not anticipating that this is going to be a great segment or do really anything for anybody, because Cena's doing this whole thing about talking about how he hasn't won a singles match or a televised match in a few years. Realistically, he should win this. But beating Solo, does that really change who John Cena is? He could lose, and nobody's going to bat an eye if he were to win the world title. And Solo losing or winning, if he beats John Cena, cool, but he's not going to get a big push out of it, I don't anticipate. And if he loses, well, everybody's just going to go, well, I mean, he loses to John Cena. It's not like he loses anything by losing to the guy that they're calling the greatest of all time. So I feel like it's kind of just going to be on the relatively short side, not all that great. And ultimately just Cena wins and it doesn't matter. They just decided they wanted Cena on the card and this is the best option that they would decide to go with.
So I don't think Cena wins, but I'll get back to that in a second. I think part of the problem with what you just laid out is the whole issue with John in general now. That there's too much of like, we really need that suspension of disbelief. Because I agree with what you're saying, and I know what you're saying comes from a place of truth. It's just like, yeah, but we're telling the story of he hasn't won a match in 2,000 days on his own. He needs to win if he's going to keep doing this. And maybe that's a fun way of telling a story of him getting back into, you know, the title picture and actually making a go of it, rather than just saying, I'm getting a title picture because I'm John Cena, LOL. And problem with that is, even though he hasn't won a match in 2,000 days, if he beats Solo, the response is going to be, oh, why are they doing that to him? Solo, I don't think has lost a singles match in the main roster yet. I could be wrong.
I think he's lost 2.
Maybe to Cody.
Right.
Well, like that's Cody. I think honestly Cena should win here. And I think they should tell a story of he wants to enter the Rumble or something. But we'll see. I'm just glad that we've gotten this little run from John. I think it's been very entertaining, even for a short time.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Solo Sikoa lost to LA Knight a couple of weeks ago, didn't he?
You might be right.
I'm just going to assume, yeah.
Listen, but Solo Sikoa is not unbeatable anymore. He's very much beatable.
Oh, so is he flat out in that Umaga role now? Where it's like, yeah, he's impressive, but he can be beaten.
Well, yeah, he's clearly just the subordinate for Reigns, and Reigns is barely ever around, and so he's there to, you know, beat the designated. You beat this guy before you face Roman for the title at some stage. So, yeah, so he won't lose all the time, but he'll lose in the build-up to whoever the person is that's taking on Roman next. So,
in that spirit, on TV, he's lost to LA Knight, Jey Uso, and Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, so that's pretty much it. So, I mean, he could. I think the one thing I could say positive about this match is that it has an element of unpredictability to it, because even though they have been building up the whole story of John Cena not being able to get a lot of victories since come back, which is, you know, they ham it up with the fact that he hasn't won a televised singles match since 2018, when he's probably only had like 4 singles matches since that time. But I think that there's at least an element of Solo could win this, because Solo is the bigger deal right now in terms of he's actually on TV every week, but that's never stopped WWE just putting a legend over the guy and expecting that being beaten by like a John Cena that's way past his prime is actually a good thing for Solo Sikoa. But fucking hell, they put Austin Theory over John Cena. Why can't they do the same thing with Solo? Austin Theory's nowhere now. He's in a tag team with Grayson Waller.
But that's all the more reason why I think, like, John should just win. Because there's more money to me in saying, let's tell a fun story with John Cena than saying, hey, you beat John Cena. Because as Callum just pointed out, Austin Theory is nowhere. And he beat John Cena at WrestleMania in a title match.
Mm-hmm.
And he's nowhere right now. So just do something with John, you know? And then build it back around to where beating him means something again.
But isn't this the end of the story for John?
I don't want it to be.
Well, not the permanent end of the story, but you know,
we had on the writer's strike, Tony.
The last that I had seen about it, they still haven't come to any kind of terms.
Oh, I'm sorry, I said writer's strike. I know the writer's strike finished.
Yeah, SAG after.
Yeah.
It seems, if I remember correctly, they are going to be having another meeting. Maybe Sunday is what it is. That could potentially be the end of it, but that seems like they just sort of keep coming back to the idea of, hey, are you taking the same deal yet? And then they go, no. And they go, fine, well, we'll talk again in a couple weeks, you know?
I mean, fundamentally, just it doesn't really matter to me who wins or loses. I don't think the match is going to be very good anyway, because it will just be Solo beating up John Cena for about 8 minutes. We've Cena taking very few bumps, and then Cena will do his usual comeback, and then he'll win, or Solo will reverse it somehow, or cheat to win and get the victory. So I don't think that. Yeah, I mean, if the match with Austin Theory is anything to go by, I still have that listed as one of my worst matches of the year so far.
I've got a new addition to that from this week from Raw.
I can imagine so. But yeah, I think that if that's any indication, then I don't hold out too much hope, because I think Solo's good, but he's not any better than Austin Theory in the ring, and Austin Theory couldn't carry John Cena to a good match, and Cena couldn't bring back his best, and I doubt 6 months later down the line he's going to be any better. So yeah, I think that this will just be, as you noted, pretty short and very forgettable, and then someone will win. I'll probably say Cena, just because if they are telling the story that he hasn't won in a while, it seems to make sense that he does get a victory, because then who's the actual guy that will end up losing to him, if not Solo Sikoa? So
it all depends, I think, on whether or not their story here is we need to build to John having a match at WrestleMania where he wins, and that's supposed to be the big deal. Oh, John Cena won a match, which is very weird to say about John Cena. Or if they were kind of just realizing, well, we don't really have anything for this Solo and Cena thing. Let's talk about that being the story. Just filler, temporary, to get him to cut one promo. And I think that could be the case. That this isn't some grand scheme, that it's just them being like, I don't know, that'll make this match seem more special. So I'm going to go Cena.
I'm going to go Cena as well.
Yeah, I'll say Cena, the more likely one.
Now, some of the other matches I do think could go one way or another. One of them I think is absolutely guaranteed. We know who's going to win that one. We'll talk about that in the main event. But one of the other matches that I think is pretty set in stone is the Women's World Championship Fatal 5-Way match. That's Rhea Ripley defending against Nia Jax, Raquel Rodriguez, Shayna Baszler, and Zoey Stark. I can't imagine almost any scenario where Rhea Ripley drops that belt here. Especially not to any of them. That's not to crap on them, of course. Raquel was somebody that I thought had the chance to go up against Rhea Ripley if they would have built her up differently, but they just don't. Shayna Baszler, of course, is great, underrated, underutilized. Zoey Stark is somebody who, down the line, I could see being a champion, but not right now. And Nia Jax has been a former champion before, but I just do not think anybody's beating Rhea for this belt right now. This also kind of feels like you lack quality, so you make up for it in quantity kind of way. Like they didn't want to do Rhea versus Shayna and actually build that up enough to just make that a good enough singles match. They didn't want to do Raquel again, and they didn't want to do Nia. So they just said, throw them all together, and that'll make up for a lack of a build. Because Rhea's really in another spot that I don't know if people really pay as much attention to it as they probably should, but WWE's in this odd, we want to make sure that our champions don't do much phase. Roman's not the only one that barely defends his belt. Rhea really hasn't defended it all that much, and they're fully aware of it too, because Becky Lynch even said it on this episode of Raw, where she said, in like 40 days, I defended the NXT Women's Championship more than Rhea Ripley has all year. So they know that that's the case, and I still don't know if maybe there's something about like an injury or something with Rhea, but she wrestles now and then, so I can only imagine that their philosophy is, if we've got somebody that we want to last all the way until Mania, let's barely have them defend the title. And Rhea is fully on the trajectory of fighting Becky at Mania. There's no way she's dropping the belt here.
Yeah, it should be a fun match. Hopefully no one gets hurt.
Because Nia's in there.
Yeah, I ain't got much to say here. It's been disappointing, Rhea as champion, even though, like, admittedly, she's having the most fun of her career. And all of Judgment Day, again, I'm just going to say, they're all doing great character work, but her as women's champion has done nothing. And it feels like they're putting her in a 5-way just so she can say, I've beaten Nia Jax and I've beaten Shayna Baszler without actually having to work a program with any of these women. That's the vibe I'm getting here. And
I've beaten everybody on Raw. There's nobody left. And it's like, well, you beat them all in one match.
Right. And it's like, to your point, they are doing this weird thing lately where they call out everything now, where they're just like, hey, have you noticed that Roman Reigns is never on TV? Doesn't that suck? Anyway, hey, have you noticed Rhea doesn't defend? Anyway, I'm not loving that kind of stuff, but yeah, Rhea's obviously going to win here. Hopefully, as Zoey Stark gets the chance to shine, Shayna gets the chance to shine. But this is Rhea Ripley's match.
Shayna Baszler, right?
Stop it.
No.
I think people are being a bit over the top with the whole Rhea Ripley doesn't defend her title enough on Raw or just in any pay-per-view situation. But she's like the main character of Raw at the moment. Like, she is everywhere for the Judgment Day. She's the de facto leader of the biggest faction on Raw. She's like getting involved in the main event title picture. She appears on NXT alongside Dominic, who's the North American champion. She is WWE's main character right now, besides Roman Reigns. And so I think that heavy feature and her being like heavily involved in a lot of segments and doing a lot of promo work is the testament to what WWE views as a star, rather than how often she defends her championship. I think evidently she's going to retain the championship here. None of the people are on her level in terms of being a champion. I don't think that it's just a means of her getting rid of as many potential challenges as possible. I think that the likelihood is that someone's going to do something in this match which makes them feel like they were about to win the title, but Rhea still manages to claw out the victory, and then that leads to whatever her next program will end up being for the title, whether that's with Zoey Stark or Shayna Baszler. I mean, the likelihood is at some point Shayna Baszler and Zoey Stark are going to probably form a tag team and go after the tag team titles instead, and that'll be their true calling, or whoever Raquel finds as another tag team partner to go after the tag team titles with. But yeah, the hope is that the match is not as big of a clusterfuck as it seems like it will probably end up being. And yeah, Rhea is almost certainly going to retain. So again, not one that I'm particularly looking forward to.
Who do you guys think takes the pin?
Zoey Stark.
Yeah, Zoe's probably the most likely. It's either Zoey or Raquel, I'd say.
This is also something that popped in my mind, which is like, goes to show how ridiculous just the landscape is right now on so many different levels. Last night when I'm watching Raw, I turned around to Caroline and I'm like, I wonder what they're going to do about Raquel's back. Because they have to all wear those like bodysuits.
Has she?
I'm pretty sure she's wrestled in Saudi before, right?
Yeah, she has. That's a yes.
Okay, I didn't remember, but I was just like, that's all the character development that they give her is they show her back, and then they're not going to be able to show her back.
Yeah, thank God Caroline is used to it, because the idea of guy turns to wife and says, hey, what are they going to do about this girl's back? It really underscores how stupid pro wrestling is.
How will they cover that back in a full body suit? That back can't withstand the full body suit. It's possible.
She's going to flex and break that, and then it's going to be an international incident.
Maybe that's the story.
That she's like, oh, she lost because she doesn't have her back exposed. She's like not at full power. This is some kind of like Samson thing with the hair instead. Yeah, it's just one of those stupid things that made me think, and I was just like, yeah, they're all going to have to be wearing these bodysuits, and all they seem to focus on with Raquel is her back, and stupid.
But to go back to what Callum was saying, and just to underscore this point yet again, you're right, Callum, you're 100% right that perhaps it is being overplayed that Rhea Ripley doesn't defend. However, you're also, that's the beauty of not watching, because you're not sitting there going, but they're not doing anything with these women, and I'm sitting here watching a 3-hour show, and where the fuck is the development of the women's championship? And so I just want to say again, you're winning by not watching.
Yeah, it is weird to see, as much as Rhea is on TV, that she very rarely has anything to do with her own self. It's always with somebody else. Like, she's basically a manager who happens to be the top, if not, number 2, but one of the top 2 women's champions in the company. I'd argue she's booked as like the more important between them. And we'll get to EO in a second, but like their idea of like, wow, she's so important that we are not going to do anything with her.
I think it's more of an indictment on how they're treating the remainder of the women's division on Raw, rather than Rhea Ripley not being able to defend. I think it's totally fine if Rhea very rarely defends a title, but in the meantime, you have to be building up whoever her next challenger is going to end up being. And they're clearly not doing a great job with that if they've just ended up with, okay, just these 4 do something, rather than, okay, we've put a concerted effort into giving Zoey Stark or Shayna Baszler or Nia Jax or whoever a series of wins, and now they're ready to take on Rhea. It's like, no, just throw them all in a match.
Certainly not building up Candice LeRae, or Candice Michelle for that matter, to be the next challenger. It's weird because like they're putting more effort into Xia Li fighting Becky for no championship than they are setting up somebody for Rhea.
Well, Becky's the end goal. Becky's will be the WrestleMania challenger, so they're essentially putting a lot of concentration into making her as big a deal as possible, and it just means that everyone else that Rhea has to face in the meantime is just always going to come off as second rate. But yeah, it's quite funny to see certain people think that that kick to the head was a real injury. Like you guys have, like, need to know how like bodies react once they're kicked. Like, she would not fall backwards from the kick and land flat on her back. She would crumple onto the ground if it actually had hurt her.
Yeah, and I mean, the Daphne LaShawn would not have just been like, are you good? Are you good? You want to stand up? Do you want to stand up and fall backward? Are you good? No, she'd be like, she's out. Okay, let's stop this match.
Yeah.
Very awkward. Well, I mentioned her. There is not just one women's title match, but there are 2, because Io Sky is defending the women's championship against Bianca. Once again, we're just kind of continuing the same thing. Io, Bianca, Charlotte, Asuka, over and over and over and over. Bianca took some time off, so let's come back to it. And I'm confused about this one because I could see a scenario where either walks out with the title. Io is in a weird spot where they haven't pulled the trigger yet on a feud with Bayley. And I don't know if that's because they don't plan on doing that, period, or they just want to wait a little longer. Maybe it even starts here or something. I could see that being starting here. Bayley gets involved and they feud without the title and Bianca's the new champion and all. But even when it comes to the future end goal of this championship, Jade Cargill throws out a big wrench in this whole thing. I had thought for the longest time that it was going to be Bianca Belair versus Charlotte Flair. And we've seen them team up and fight each other and fight alongside each other with the same Io and Asuka type of, the four quartet kind of deal. Enough that at this point, I don't think you could do Belair versus Flair and have it mean as much. But do you throw Jade Cargill in there? Is it a triple threat? Is it Belair versus Cargill? Is it Flair versus Cargill? Because the last that we left Io and Flair basically should have won. So do you just come back to that again and Flair wins the belt and whatever? I'm thinking that Cargill is going to win the Royal Rumble and she's going to challenge whoever the champion is here. But I feel bad for Io because that just takes her out of the mix. And I cannot imagine that this is going to be Io versus Bayley at WrestleMania. Or
why not?
Because that just doesn't seem like they're going to go for that compared to Belair, Flair, and Cargill.
Why can't Io and Bayley just fight each other with no belt?
Oh, I'm talking about for the belt.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, it doesn't have to be the end of Io if whatever happens ends up not being with the women's title at stake. There's still a clear story for her.
I think if we get a title change here, Io and Bayley fight over the course of the next few months, and it's not a Mania and they're just left off the card, which is a shame for Io and for Bayley, but especially for Io. But then, I don't know. I mean, the Belair against Cargill, and then Flair's just not involved. Is Kyrie involved in any of this? She's supposed to be coming back, right?
She could be.
So it's like the game plan Io versus Kyrie, and then Belair and Flair and Cargill, there's some kind of non-title match or something, but then Kyrie wins the Royal Rumble. Like, I lean more towards the idea that Cargill wins the Royal Rumble and she challenges either Belair or Flair, or it's a triple threat. Which means that Io's got to drop that belt. And it's a matter of, do they have her drop it to Belair here, or did they have Flair come back around? Right now, Tuesday afternoon, I'm going with Bianca Belair winning this title right now.
I'm going to say it wouldn't surprise me, but I'll say not yet. I'll say Io wins.
What do you think that they ultimately do for Mania, though?
Oh, probably Bianca and Flair. I'm not commenting on Cargill until I see where they put her. Because they could end up putting her on NXT tonight. And then, oops, we all look dumb for suggesting otherwise.
I think that, the match itself should be good. These two have had good chemistry with each other in the past, so I'm sure they'll manage to put together a decent match here. I think that the likelihood is that Io will retain, just because you have Bayley and Dakota get involved, maybe something to do with Charlotte getting in the mix as well. So I think that eventually someone is going to beat Io before WrestleMania, because it's likely going to be Bianca versus Charlotte at WrestleMania. So, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you need Bianca to be the one that's challenging for the title there, or you need Charlotte to be the one challenging. I guess you can kind of mix and match. But yeah, I think that Io, at least for the time being, retains it. I don't think they'll have the title change on this show.
When do you think that they will pull the trigger on that?
Probably on an episode of SmackDown.
And then again,
I don't know what Survivor Series looks like or anything.
Right, that's another thing too.
Oh no, well yeah, it wouldn't happen in Survivor Series. I'd say probably, let's say the final episode of SmackDown of 2023.
Yeah, they tend to do that, don't they?
Well, if Survivor Series
I'd say someone
does,
between that and Royal Rumble, Io drops the title to one of Charlotte or Bianca.
if Survivor Series does end up potentially having Raw versus SmackDown, and if they just do the whole thing where they go, well, we'll do the champion versus champion thing again, but we're going to ignore Roman because fuck you, that's why, you know what I mean? Then I think we're more likely looking at Rhea Ripley versus either Bianca or Charlotte than Rhea versus Io.
I wouldn't say so. I think they've already done. Well, they did Rhea versus Charlotte earlier, so I could see that match happening. But I definitely would see Rhea versus Io Sky rather than Rhea versus Bianca Belair, because they just have Rhea beat Io Sky. Whereas if it's Bianca Belair, that's a match they want to save.
They'll do some kind of schmoz finish.
Yeah,
just to get away from an actual ending. But I can also see them anchoring, especially if they didn't have Roman. I could also see them anchoring a card around Rhea Ripley versus Bianca Belair.
Being like, that's the big champion versus champion match.
Yeah.
You know? Same with Flair, though. I mean, Rhea versus Flair is like a WrestleMania rematch and on that whole thing, you know?
I'm not saying they couldn't do that, but I think they would just as comfortably just have Rhea beat Io Sky at Survivor Series if they do the brand versus brand thing. And again, we don't know how brand versus brand is going to take hold. It might just be one match between,
right.
Well, it might just be one men's match and one women's match, like it was at the start of things.
And I mean, WWE is certainly flawed enough a way that, like, it wouldn't shock me if they're setting up this whole competition between Aldis and Pierce and they don't pull the trigger on Raw versus SmackDown. And then we all go, what the fuck was the point of that? And then you just go, oh, you know, I mean, we didn't tell you that we were going to do that. And then we go, okay. Because that's happened plenty of times in the past where it's like you're setting up something that's very clearly the setup and then they just do something different. They're like, well, we never said that we were going to have Roman beat Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 34 or something, you know. But I think that there's a chance that the title changes hands. But I also think that there's another title that might change hands here. Rey Mysterio defending the United States title against Logan Paul. Actually, before we do that, let's just go back. I'm going to go Bianca.
I'll go with you.
2 for Io and 1 for Belair. Okay. So Rey Mysterio and Logan Paul. The United States title is in a weird spot. They pretty much need a belt that they can defend because Roman's barely there. And if we're in any way in the position that I think we are with Roman right now, which is essentially he's going to do this show and disappear for the whole rest of the year. If it's true that he's not on Survivor Series, they're not going to bother to put him in any kind of a title match whatsoever. There's no pay-per-view after Survivor Series except for NXT Deadline. He's certainly not going to be on NXT Deadline. But if he defends his title not at Survivor Series, it'll be at the Royal Rumble. So they're going to not have a championship defended if they go with Logan Paul and he ends up just disappearing. But he might be able to stick around a little bit longer. And we might see United States champion Logan Paul up against Gunther at Survivor Series. That could be pretty fucking fun. It's not at all what I would imagine is going to happen, but that in and of itself is also confusing because we don't know how the Raw and SmackDown thing is going to work. I don't think we're going to get Gunther versus Logan Paul at Survivor Series, but I do think that there's a chance Logan Paul wins this belt. And I'm actually looking for way many months down the line, more so than I am even Survivor Series right now. I think we could see Logan Paul win the United States Championship here and carry it until WrestleMania. And then I think he loses it to LA Knight at Mania.
Well, that's certainly a interesting fantasy booking choice. I think Logan Paul wins. And since Tony threw it out there like that, I think he's losing it to Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania.
I think that I'm pretty convinced that Logan Paul gets the victory here. They'll want to make him United States champion. It makes it feel like a big deal. They don't care if there's no titles on SmackDown. at any point. Might just be SmackDown is just literally a no title show at any point. But yeah, I think that they'll just have Logan Paul it gets a few headlines, you get a title change in a big show. So yeah, that's the easy way to do it.
And over the course of the next few weeks or months, however long he's holding the championship, he's carrying that around. He's doing any kind of media stuff, talking about the United States Championship. It's not the belt that if you wanted to get the most amount of headlines, you'd give him the world title. But of course, they're not going to do that. So you give him that. It's not a bad PR move. And Rey Mysterio can certainly lose that at any point. It's not like he is in any kind of jeopardy to, he hasn't held it long enough. He's held it long enough and he's Rey Mysterio. He's fine. But I do think we're in line for a title change here. And that's not what I was anticipating. I was thinking that Bobby Lashley was going to be the one that beats Rey Mysterio. So it's weird because the Santos Escobar thing and the LA Knight thing and the Austin Theory thing and all this United States title seems like they're just sort of each week they might just be like, I don't know, I guess we'll do this with it in the coming future.
It's a lot easier if you just let it go. Like if you actively try not to think about it, it gets easier.
I mean, by that rationale, it's the same as the if you don't watch the TV show, it's a lot better.
Well, I keep going back to it because it's true.
It's true. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. Like, you're not supposed to pay attention to the fact that Rhea Ripley's not defending her belt. You're not supposed to pay attention to the fact that Cody and Damian have fought each other 19 times or, whatever. Just the same as you're not supposed to pay attention to the idea that Damian Priest is going to be here on the same show during Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre, and that there is no reason why Damian Priest shouldn't have cashed in by now. There's been like 3 shows that they've given him an explanation where it was like, your leg is messed up and that's why you shouldn't. Most of the time, he just comes out and just doesn't do it. But they're not harping on this as much right now compared to the Shinsuke Nakamura whole back storyline thing. I'm thinking that there's less jeopardy now of Seth Rollins losing that World Heavyweight Championship. There's a chance that Drew McIntyre wins and they go with him as somebody to, build up for a WrestleMania match. But right now I'm just going, Rollins beats McIntyre. It probably is what sets McIntyre off for a true heel turn. And there's probably no tease of a cash in. Rollins just walks out with the belt.
Yep. I mean, I'd say that Seth is likely to retain here because we all know, well, at least the news cycle going around is that McIntyre still hasn't signed a new contract with WWE, so he's not going to be sticking around for too much longer than I think that it's a pretty safe bet to say that he's not going to be winning one of the top titles anytime soon. And yeah, I guess the most interesting aspect of this match is like what's Rhea's involvement going to be in this. Presumably, this will happen after the after the women's match, so she can have some kind of say in what goes on. Maybe try and help one of them win, or just try and mess with both of them. I think there is a chance that Damian Priest cashes in here because you could tell the story of Cody beating Damian earlier in the show. Then Damian comes out to try and actually capture the championship. Maybe you could do some build around that, do a rematch between him and Seth in Survivor Series. I'd say I don't think a cash in is out of the question, but what I would say is pretty certain is that Seth retains at least beats Drew McIntyre.
Seth beats Drew McIntyre. I think Damian Priest cashes in. They have leaned so heavily into this Rhea Ripley thing that either they're going to try to make it look like one of them is. We just watched that SummerSlam with Flair and Perfect and Savage and Warrior. It's kind of like that where they keep doing this thing where they're making you think, well, one of them should probably just go with Rhea. And I think that's leading to Rhea, of course, being in the corner of the real eventual champion, Damian Priest. So I'm going to say Priest cashes in, and that's your big moment. And that's the pyro, that's the beauty. And pay no attention to the fact that Roman Reigns is going to run right through LA Knight. Please don't look over there, because look at this new world champion we got right here.
Well, where do you think that the world title ends up at Mania?
Ends up around Gunther by the end of the show, I hope. It could still go back to Seth. You know, we've talked about this before where I still think the likely world title match of Mania, regardless of what happens, is Seth Rollins defending against Gunther. But that doesn't mean he has to keep it all the way through.
I'm less believing that nowadays.
Why is that?
I don't know. For some reason, I'm thinking that Gunther is still going to walk into Mania as the Intercontinental Champion. And like that he fights Brock.
He could. I did listen. I'd like that to be the World Heavyweight Championship match, if we're being honest. Like, that'd be a great world title match.
I'd be down for that. Yeah. So, ultimate picks when it comes to this, I'm going to go Rollins beats McIntyre, no cash in.
I'm going Rollins beats McIntyre, and there is a cash in.
At the moment, just go Rollins beat McIntyre.
And then, as you said, Roman Reigns definitely beats LA Knight. Sorry, LA Knight is fun and all, but he is not beating Roman for this belt. It's just not happening.
The only way this happens is if they just go, we wanted to shock you. And then people get upset. Because if they do that, they're going to go, well, then why couldn't you have just given it to Sammy or Jay or Cody? So Roman Reigns has to win. To the point where, like, I've done transcriptions of LA Knight being like, yeah, win or lose, I'm going to beat him up. Because they're not setting you up for disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, well, there don't really much need to be said here. Roman's going to win because LA Knight's not going to be the WWE champion. So yeah, Roman wins, and you know, even out of all of like Roman's very slow, methodical, talking-based matches, this has real potential to be the absolute worst.
Okay, well, expand on that.
LA Knight's not very good as a wrestler. He's a serviceable mid-card guy in like a wrestling sense. I would be pretty much as excited for this if it was Roman versus The Miz in Saudi Arabia, in terms of just a pure match quality standpoint. Like, it's not going to be very good. Roman has had like not great matches in his current style against people like three times the worker of LA Knight, and you really think this one's going to be good?
I didn't say that at all. I just wanted to hear you say it. Look.
LA Knight's a catchphrase. LA Knight's a catchphrase, and he's a great promo. He's not as over as he is because he's putting on banger matches.
I am glad that he got this moment. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very cool that he worked his way up. It's very cool that just this time last year, we were talking about him being fired in favor of Maxine Dupree. And it's cool that he got himself to this level. But it's also, I don't know if you guys are feeling this, and maybe it's fucked up for me to say, but it's a little infuriating for me that with a roster that includes guys like AJ Styles and Lashley and I don't know, even like a Damian Priest or something, that like LA Knight's the first fresh face Roman Reigns has fought in what feels like forever to me. He's the first one that it's not just like it's an extension of the Cody Bloodline Sammy thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a little upsetting to me that they haven't done more of these matches.
It pisses me off because we went through the draft and we were like, all right, well, he's got a built-in thing with you can have Bobby Lashley and maybe even bring back the Hurt Business against the Bloodline. And you've got AJ Styles and the OC against the Bloodline. And they didn't do either of those matches, not even including the Bloodline thing, but like they just didn't do Roman versus AJ or Roman versus Bobby.
It's a little disappointing to me, but yeah, I don't see LA Knight winning. And I'm glad he's this over. I wonder what we're saying about him next year at this time. I hope he stays that over, but I don't see it. Given what we know about WWE, I don't see it.
That's why I think that there is a good chance it's LA Knight versus Logan Paul at Mania.
I don't even see that, pal. I like it, but I don't see that being the move.
What could you see? Logan Paul.
Oh, I said Bobby Lashley.
Logan Paul against Bobby Lashley?
Yeah.
What about LA Knight? What do you think he's doing?
Hosting.
He's not wrong.
Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal winner. You know,
that was my first thought, but Callum's not wrong.
Wouldn't be the craziest thing.
It's the most WrestleMania in history or whatever.
That's the we had Stupendous 2 years ago.
Yes-Mania.
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 Yeah. All right. Well, Roman Reigns, that's a 3 for. We will see, of course, if any surprises happen over the course of this, but we know already what happened on SmackDown, so I highly doubt that they are going to announce any other matches or make any tweaks to the card or anything. NXT tonight shouldn't have any bearing whatsoever on it, and Wednesday and Thursday don't have anything going on, so it seems like this is pretty locked in, but Saturday afternoon we will be covering this on Smark Moment, and I'll be having my post on the wrestling news as well. And at 5 p.m. or so, or 1 p.m. on Sunday, according to that thing, we'll be doing our post show, talking about what happened, if there was anything that changed our minds about, like, you know, hey, this was actually better than I thought it was going to be, or anything along those lines. We've got the Fantasy League stuff that we might end up making some different picks right beforehand. We'll update you if that ends up being the case. But I think that covers everything. So make sure that you are clicking around on all the stuff we mentioned before. Make sure you're following us on Facebook and Twitter at SmarkOutMoment. Make sure you have that little email alert set up. Check out fanboysanonymous.com for everything that's happening over on the Blue brand. Make sure you're following that Facebook and Twitter, checking up that YouTube account, subscribing on that front. Head up to Patreon over there. Click on the link tree that you can find at amangotree.com. You'll find links to Fanboys and Smark Out Moment and everything else under a Mango Tree. Same thing as if you go to anthonymango.com. Just find me at Tony Mango and follow what Rob and Callum are up to.
Yep, you can follow me everywhere at Dude Release. Check out my work on Fightful and WrestleZone, and check out that Darkcast for real. Like, it's a good one. If you just like me and Tony being bros, then you'll enjoy that one.
You can find me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. Check out the Power Rankings every Saturday on smartcamo.com, where I rank the WWE superstars based on their previous week's performances. And then while you're there, check out the Fantasy League, which is one of the big follow-up points from these predictions, because that will influence who gets to make some changes to their teams, who gets added to the teams, and all that other great stuff. So that is, so stay tuned for the results of Crown Jewel and how that affects all the points and standings as we continue on until WrestleMania, where the final winner is announced.
Okay, everybody. You know the score. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure that you hit that like button on this to let us know that you enjoyed this. And we will be seeing you next up with that Darkcast that we had pre-recorded. After that, the hot tags, and then the Crown Jewel Pay-Per-Viewpoint post-show. Until then, everybody, enjoy your Halloween, and we will see you next time. This has been another Smark Out Moment, and we're being counted out.